All right, welcome everyone to the first episode of a new podcast experience called Zero to Play. This is the Zero to Play podcast, and I'm your host, Carl Leducq. And this episode is purely dedicated to giving context behind the mission of the show. I'm going to speak a little bit about my story and just what I hope to achieve with this. So, if you're just here because you want to hear one of the guests speaking, I'd suggest you just jump right into one of the other episodes that are up, and feel free to come back to this later. This is just a kind of overall beginning starting point. I'm calling it starting from zero, and yeah, just an area for me to kick off this show. So what's funny is I haven't ever done a solo podcast before. I very much am used to interviewing someone and being focused and engaged in a conversation. So I'm going to have to be a little bit more, I guess, proactive so that there's not a lot of dead space. But we'll see how it goes. So thanks for joining me. I'm really excited about this. It is currently the 25th of January, 8 a.m. in the morning, and in 2021 is the year. And yeah, so what is Zero to Play? Why are we here? What is this? So Zero to Play is a game development podcast exploring the meaning and evolution of games as an industry and aiming to understand the shifts that are happening in society and in the medium. So I plan on interviewing guests from all walks of game development, from developers to artists to business owners, investors, gamers, streamers, authors. I kind of just want to speak to people from all areas of gaming and game development. This is what's fascinating me. This is what is changing so much in the world right now, and an area that I really want to help support, help bring awareness to, help share the stories of the people involved, and just help deconstruct and understand what a game really is. And there's some really kind of high level philosophical questions that I'm really curious about, and I think the guests that I bring on will be able to share a lot of interesting perspectives on the topic. So yeah, I plan on going deep into understanding what is at the core of these people's passions that I interview, and what drives them to make games and to make the decisions that they're making to pursue this career path and this path in their life, because they could be doing anything else, but they've chosen to work in games. They've chosen to build games and build the industry. And I'm curious as to why, and I think that's part of the conversation as to where society's going and where gaming is ultimately going to go in the future. So I find that really interesting. Um, Another area of the podcast is that gaming is a complicated medium. It's not like music and film and writing. It's kind of just like film, how you can integrate music into films to kind of make a better experience. Gaming as well is a compounding medium where you can integrate lots of different mediums into one to create an experience. And because of this, and because gaming in its nature is action based, it creates a lot of interesting scenarios that gaming is applied. And you have narrative games, you have games that are more like sports, you have gaming mechanics that are integrated into software to be made more fun. And there's so many kind of different areas that it's not as concrete as another medium might be. There's a debate whether gaming is considered an art form, or if it's just entertainment, if it's just for fun. And there's a really interesting question as to what is fun, what is play, what is a game, and these are all questions that I find fascinating, and that I'll definitely be kind of pressing my guests that I have on the show to understand that more clearly and understand their perspective on it, because it's not something that has a clear answer, and I think it's something that changes with society as society changes and evolves, and as technology grows, and as games get used for different things, the definition is going to change. That's what I'm really interested in. So yeah, I'm going to speak a little bit about my story and my background and how I am working in games now, how my kind of experience with games when I was young, and I'll go into that for probably the majority of this podcast. But I also want to just highlight how another area that I think gaming is complicated is because it's now being tied to so many different industries. So education, for example, they're implementing game mechanics to make teaching and courses more fun, more engaging. So that's just one area that's been completely disrupted by game design, and the line between what is a game gets blurred, and I find that really interesting. So a couple different industries that I just want to kind of highlight: automation, software, filmmaking, live events. These are all things that are incorporating tools and game design mechanics to make better experiences. And it's all relevant to this. It's all part of the same thread of what is a game, what is the process and behind the scenes of these people and the projects that they're making as they're building their games. So yeah, thanks for joining me on this journey. I've realized just what I want to end on this kind of whole philosophical rant that I'm going on. I just want to end by one kind of thing that's brought peace for me when it comes to games. And I found something that makes a lot of sense is I've categorized games into three different areas. There's the art, so the art and entertainment type of games, the story-driven games, the experiences, the things that are probably the most commonly known, the things that you find on consoles and PC and mobile. I think the art and entertainment category is a big one, but that's just one of them. Second category that I think is a clear one is esports and sports. So games, a game like golf and soccer and chess, these are all kind of real life games, but technology has kind of infused itself with sports, and now leagues are being created. If you think of Riot Games and what they're doing with League of Legends and Valorant and Rocket League, for example, is also a sport. It's a competitive game that has a clear set of rules and a community behind it that is competitive, and it's kind of creating these new leagues, these new infrastructures for just like that's its whole industry. So I think it's important to distinguish between art and entertainment and kind of story-driven games, and then you have the sports games that have a clear set of rules. They're competitive, they're repetitive, they don't really have a narrative element to them per se. They do have clear characters and environments and branding, but not necessarily a story with a beginning, middle, and end. So that's interesting. And then the third category of games that I think exists are tools. So this is where it kind of gets blurry and where it kind of encompasses all of the areas that are emerging right now. So just a few examples that I think kind of speak to this category. For example, if you think of Duolingo, it's an app that teaches you how to learn a language, and you kind of go up levels, you rank up. It's very colorful, it's very bright, it's very simple. You do similar tests, and it becomes increasingly challenging. I would say that this is a game that is used as a tool to help you learn something. And I think there's an interesting category of games that are being created in this space that their initial mission isn't to be entertaining, it's to educate and to teach. And it's an app, it's a software company that's influenced by game design and game mechanics. And I feel like this is growing in a lot of areas like Facebook. if you think of financial tech companies, fintech companies, like with stock markets, Robinhood. I saw an article the other day saying that Robinhood, which is like a stock trading app, is making it easy for people to trade stocks, and it's making it fun and getting a lot of people investing now, and it almost is making investing feel like a game. And there's a lot of kind of what's the word, like philosophical questions about if that's like morally right, and that's all very fascinating to me, and that's all happening very fast, and that's kind of where this podcast is going to live, is within those three categories between an art, a tool, and a sport. So that's just something that kind of made sense in my head, and where I'm going to start this journey off is kind of seeing things as these three different categories. So yeah, I guess I could talk a little bit more about myself, just to give some context. During these interviews with guests, I don't plan on highlighting many of my stories. It is very much about the guest and their experience and their perspective, and I do want to be more of an interviewer and someone who goes deeper on questions. So I don't want to talk too much about myself, but I do think it's nice for me to give some context as to my background in this episode, just so that those who are curious can find out a little bit more about myself and where I'm kind of starting on this journey, and that might make people more engaging, more receptive to the conversations that I have. So my name's Carl. I am 26 years old. I am from Auckland, New Zealand, and I am turning 27 in March, in 2 months' time. I work at the moment as a production coordinator for a game studio called Rocketworks, and we're currently building a survival game called Icarus. It's planned to release this year. So I'm really excited about that. That's my full-time job, and I'm very passionate about that. This podcast is very much a side hustle that I do outside of work. I am passionate about growing within the gaming industry and building my career there. And I think it's valuable to kind of have this outlet on the side, just to help network and help me grow. But just so you guys know, 40 plus hours a week, I'm working at the moment as a production coordinator daily, helping the team with their tasks and priorities and meetings, and working with the designers and the programmers and the artists, and I love it. That's my passion. That's what I love to do. So that takes up most of my time. So this podcast is definitely something that I'm doing outside of those hours. So for the beginning of this podcast, I'm going to be reaching out to a lot of people that I've worked with in the gaming industry, people that I used to work with 6 years ago that are now working overseas at some of the biggest AAA studios in the world. So I'm really excited to reach out to those people, get them on, get their perspective, and hear what they have to say. So that's my current job. That's what I'm doing right now. I want to I'll talk about my gaming experience from the top. So I worked in film initially. After high school, I went to film school for a year and did a diploma at South Seas Film and Television School, where I got a diploma in directing and screenwriting. That was my major, and really enjoyed that. I was really passionate about storytelling and filmmaking, and just telling great stories. So that was my kind of path of that at that point. And I kind of freelanced for a year trying to find a career path, and I kind of found some work as a content creator, creating behind the scenes vlogs and things like that. And that's kind of been my parallel career path over the last 8 years, as well as game development. So what happened is, a year after film school, I started throwing my CV with the little experience that I've had to different companies, and I found this company in Auckland called Gameloft, which was a French mobile gaming studio. I didn't know much about it. I didn't know much of the games that they had developed. I wasn't really big into mobile gaming, but I was a big fan of gaming, and I'll go a bit more into my kind of childhood gaming experiences after this. But just for work-related things, I went to Gameloft. I gave in my CV, said that I was really passionate about games, and then just kind of crossed my fingers. And luckily, a week later, I got called back and I got offered an internship as a QA tester. So I was over the moon at this point because I had no idea what a QA tester was. I honestly had no understanding of the gaming industry at this point. I knew that I wanted to be somewhere creative. I felt like gaming was creative in the same way that filmmaking was, and I was really excited to kind of be going into this new area, this new industry. So I worked at Gameloft for a year I worked for 3 months as a as a QA tester intern. And after 3 months, I got offered a full-time position there, which I was really grateful for. So I ended up staying on as a QA tester for a year. And after a year, I ended up being, I wouldn't say promoted, but I changed department to become an assistant producer. There was an opportunity that came up, and I wasn't sure if I'd enjoy production, but I put my hand up, and I got offered the job, and really loved production. I really fell in love with being a part of all the different departments. And I'm not a programmer. I don't have a lot of programming knowledge. I am trying to learn programming on the side, but it's difficult. But I did fall in love with production. I did feel like I could give a lot of value there. So I worked with Gameloft for another year as an assistant producer. And then what year was it? I think it was 2015. At the beginning of 2015, after working there for 2 years, they announced that the studio is shutting down, unfortunately. So there was about 100, I think 120 odd employees at Gameloft that were all made redundant, including myself. And so that was a bit of a shame. But what happened is my partner and I ended up going to Vancouver for 2 years. We wanted to kind of leave Auckland and get some experience in a different city, and went to Vancouver, had a great time there. I did apply for a few jobs at EA, the beautiful EA studio that's in Vancouver, but unfortunately I didn't get any responses there. So I worked as a content creator while we're in Vancouver. And then on returning to New Zealand, I got an opportunity. I reached out to our old studio manager from Gameloft, Patrick Wagner, and he told me what he was doing down in Wellington at Weta, and he was starting a kind of a special projects division called Weta Game Shop, and he asked me if I was interested in coming down to help them ship their game that they were making. So I went down to Wellington and worked as a QA tester for Dr. Grodborts, which was an augmented reality game on the Magic Leap, and had an amazing time. Got to see some of the old colleagues that I'd met again, work with them again, and that was really cool. I loved that experience. It was really cool to work with a new device in a new area of games. Going from mobile to AR was a cool switch, and just the different tools that we used and things like that I found really valuable. But unfortunately, I didn't want to stay in Wellington. That was one of the kind of big. My partner and I came back from Vancouver to settle in Auckland, and Wellington, even though it's a lovely city, wasn't where I called home. So I unfortunately, once the game had shipped, said goodbye, and then headed back up to Auckland. And I continued working as a content creator because I couldn't find the opportunities in games at that time. And at the beginning of 2020, I saw an article about a new studio that was being built in Auckland at the very top of the PwC Tower, which was the tallest commercial building in New Zealand. It was a very powerful headline, and it got me interested. And I kind of fell in love with that idea and that kind of dream, and found out that I knew someone that worked at Rocketworks and reached out and got an interview, several interviews actually for different positions that I was interested in. First as a QA tester, and then I got interviewed for a production position and got accepted. So yeah, that's kind of been my journey, and I've been at Rocketworks since June last year and have really loved it so far. It's amazing. The team here is incredibly talented. Dean, the CEO, is awesome. He's got such a great vision of the industry as a whole and the game that we're making. He's bringing so much experience from his days at DayZ, and I couldn't be in a better place right now. Auckland is my home, and this is a dream job. So that's where I'm currently at, and yeah, so that's some context behind who I am, what I'm doing, and yeah, now I'm starting this podcast to just try and bring more awareness to some of the talented people around here. So I think what's cool is hearing people's stories about what got them into games and like why they like games, because gaming, especially video games, are such a new form of creativity. It's quite young, since the inception of the computer and Pong. The video games industry has kind of evolved with technology, and that's just kind of hockey sticked immensely, with the internet and social media and technology being able to make more realistic experiences. And the filmmaking industry has kind of been impacted the same way, but it's still so young. Like, it's only 20 years old, 20, 30 years old. And there's just so much innovation happening every year. So my first experiences with games was, what I remember the most was Pokemon. Was getting a Game Boy Color, and my brother and I both having Game Boys, playing Pokemon. I think we got the initial Game Boy that came with Tetris, and we played Tetris. We had a bag full of different Game Boy games. I remember some of them, but Pokemon was definitely the kind of catalyst, the thing that I committed the most time to. And as every generation of Pokemon came out, I would get the new games and get them and play them with my brother. We'd kind of get one or the other. I think I was Pokemon Red, he was Pokemon Blue, and we just kind of grew up with Pokemon. We went to see the movies, we got the board games. I definitely had a few Pokemon t-shirts, and don't think I got the Pokemon bed set at that time, but I probably could have if it was on sale, to be honest. So Pokemon was a big part of my life, and not only Pokemon, but I think Nintendo, because we ended up getting a Nintendo 64 and playing a bunch of games. We played Pokemon Stadium on that a ton, but we ended up like playing different games that we loved. For example, Super Smash Bros. We loved 007, GoldenEye was amazing. Lilac Wars was an awesome game. Pokemon Snap. And there's so many little memories that Mario Kart was huge. Played Mario Kart with so many family members, and even just competing with my brother. That was a huge part of our childhood. And then as we grew up, this was kind of early 2000s. As we grew up, the PlayStation came out. We ended up getting a PlayStation 2, playing a bunch of games on there. War of the Monsters, Dark Cloud. These are all just like random games that I remember sinking hours into. SSX Tricky. They're all just kind of, and this is kind of when gaming was there's just so many games at this point that you could choose from and experiment with, and as a kid you just kind of get lost in these worlds, and I loved it. And my parents were very much just kind of providing to that interest, and getting every new toy that came out. For handheld consoles, I remember getting the original Game Boy, the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy Advance, And then I got a PSP after that. In terms of consoles, I had the Nintendo 64, then the PlayStation 2, then got the original Xbox. And with the Xbox, that was quite a pivotal moment because at this point, I think I was about 12, 13 maybe, when Halo came out, and absolutely fell in love with Halo. Um, I spent hours on that, and not only that, but I rode the wave into Halo 2, and I can't remember if Halo 2 was on the Xbox 360 or not, but Halo 2 was a huge moment for online gaming, and that was a whole wave of fun, of playing online with other people, being really competitive. I'm a really competitive person, so that was a lot of fun for me. I got lost in the voice chats and just trying to be better than everyone else, and some really good memories there. LAN parties with friends. Yeah, that was awesome. And then actually, yeah, now that I remember, Halo 2 came out. It was on the original Xbox, and then I kind of stepped away from games a bit and focused a bit on my work on high school. But I do remember people talking about this game called Call of Duty, and I was kind of interested in getting another console, and that was the game that kind of was at the top of my mind of what I'd want to play. So I ended up getting, I think, an Xbox 360 with Call of Duty 4, and then from that I might do like another post about this, but I do think I became addicted to Call of Duty 4. That was something that I played daily. I played daily for years. I think gaming's amazing, but I think if I think back, if there's any regrets that I have, it's some of the time that I wasted playing that game that ultimately didn't get me anywhere in my life. And that's another discussion, I think, for another day. But I absolutely loved Call of Duty. I loved sharpening um, my my reaction skills and being competitive, and that was a huge chapter of my life. And got called Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops. I ended up making friends through Call of Duty that I ended up going to fly. I flew to Australia to stay with them for a week. And this was like I had never met these people, but they were honestly my best friends at the time. And that was just such an interesting moment. And since then, since that kind of timed with me going to film school, and that's when I kind of put gaming as a hobby on hold and focused on my career, on my job, and then that's when I kind of started wanting to be more productive and make better decisions, I guess, with my future, and that's when I thought of working in games would be a great balance for me. So that's when I ended up seeking this job in game development, and has brought us to where we are today. I do balance. I don't play too many games these days. I don't really feel like I have all the time in the world. I'd love to. I've actually bought so many games off Steam sales that I just don't get around to playing. I don't have a PC or console or anything at home. I do sometimes get lost in some mobile games. During the pandemic last year when we were in lockdown, I played a bunch of PUBG Mobile and got into some of those games. Um, at work, I love to play Valorant, and yeah, so I'm a big fan of competitive esports games, and I'm watching a lot of streamers now. Usually, that's how I get my gaming fix, is by watching streamers play these new games that came out, like Cyberpunk and things like that. That's how I kind of vicariously live through them, because I just don't feel like I have the time to go through all that. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself and my story. I could talk about that for hours, really, and I didn't really have a script going into this. I just wanted to share a little bit more of my story in this first episode. And yeah, I've been rambling for a while. I think this might be kind of where I want to leave it. Just a little bit more information behind Zero to Play. I'm planning on making it a 13 episode season. So I'm hoping in a year to create 4 seasons of the show. And with every season, I want to level up. That's very gaming related. Every season, I want to just make a better show. As you can tell, the audio equipment, the video equipment isn't the greatest in this season, but I'm really pushing and hoping that by next season, I can have a bit more of a plan, a bit more of an understanding of how podcasts work, and just grow the podcast um, that way and grow organically, and just kind of put this out there. So please, if the quality is what is making you step away and not kind of be immersed and pulled into the stories, then please stick around, or come back in a few months, and I'm hoping that changes have been made, or at least, yeah, wait till season 2, and hopefully the quality will be better. I wish I had more time to make more social media assets and promote the guests more, but we'll see, because I do. I do have to maintain a balance to pull off this podcast outside of work and family and everything. So yeah, 13 episode series. I hope to have a guest more or less every episode. This one, for example, is a solo episode, which I didn't think I was going to do until last week, but I'm glad I'm doing it, just to give some context of the beginning of this journey. And yeah, I think if I was to end on a few things, it would just be some questions that I want to answer during the journey of this podcast. So I think understanding what a game is at its core is really interesting. I think trying to understand the future of games and how games will be used in society, to understand the trends, and where, I guess, to better understand where to put your people's attention, and I don't know, just try and answer some kind of goals as to where this whole thing might go. I think it's fun to predict. It's fun to make predictions, or to make assumptions, and then to see how they play out. I think gaming has the ability to influence every industry, because at its core, I think I wrote this down somewhere, the definition of a game through Wikipedia is an activity that one engages in for amusement or fun. And I found that really interesting, because an activity that one engages in for amusement or fun, I just had this thought that what if there were two activities that do the exact same thing? So for example, if we take Duolingo, if you have two activities, two apps that teach you how to learn a language, but one is more fun than the other, wouldn't the one that's more fun be the one that's chosen and ultimately more successful? And I find that really interesting, because couldn't everything then be made more fun? Couldn't mowing the lawn be made more fun and turned into a sort of game? And wouldn't that be something that people would choose to do over a more boring and sterile experience? So I find that fascinating. I don't know how soon mowing the lawn will be turned into a game, but I have this fascination with how far gaming can go as a medium, and I think we're at an interesting point now where software is being created so fast, and social experiences are being made, and ingrained in these games. People are saying that Fortnite is becoming more of a social network than Facebook is, because these kids are hanging out during the time that others are on their phones on Facebook. They're hanging out and interacting with their friends through Fortnite. And it begs a bigger question of, what is social media? What is a game? What is the future of Fortnite? How are they valuing their product, and where are they going to take it in the future? And Roblox is doing something interesting as well, with making a platform that other people can make games and sell their games through Roblox. And and that it creates a whole industry, a whole set of jobs. It's an interesting world that we're kind of getting into. Now, and also game development becoming easier, I think, is another interesting conversation. If people like myself that have no programming experience can make a game experience that is immersive and fun, I think that's going to be an interesting shift in just the future of entertainment and what people consume, what people sell. We'll see how it affects everything. Anyway, I didn't want to get too wishy-washy, but I think that's what this podcast was always going to be. I tried writing a script for this and realized that I just needed to go to go off the cuff with it, because there's too many big complicated topics that I have, and what's cool is every guest that I have on, I go deeper into what their perspective is and what their experience is, to ask questions specifically about what they're doing. So I really hope you guys enjoy this season, this series. I would love to hear your thoughts. You can follow the podcast at Zero to Play on Twitter, at Zero to Play on Facebook, at Zero to Play IG on Instagram. There's going to be a YouTube page set up for this as well at some point. If you'd like to follow me, I plan to post behind the scenes as I develop this podcast, things that aren't relevant to the podcast itself, but things maybe the equipment that I'm buying, or questions that I have about podcasting or interviewing or things like that. I do want to document my journey online as well throughout this whole process. So you can follow me on Twitter at Carl's Content. And it's Carl's Content on Instagram as well. Or you can email me at carl.leduc@gmail.com. And I'd love to interact and engage with you guys and hear your stories, your projects that you're working on. I plan on talking to people from all areas of gaming. So it could be a one-man indie studio project, or it could be an executive at a AAA studio. I want to talk to everyone in between, because everyone's in this industry together, and even between mobile and PC and VR and augmented reality, it's all relevant. It's all important. So yeah, thanks for listening. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. This episode was very much all over the place, but I hope it was valuable, and you got to understand a bit more of my background and my journey. Yeah, thanks, and enjoy the following episodes with all of the talented guests. Take care, guys. See ya.